This is Michael Popok, and it must be time for Legal AF After Dark. We got to return to Judge Aileen Cannon in Florida, who's holding a series of hearings, after which we'll have to see if there's anything left of the Mar-a-Lago prosecution, whether the indictment will stand, whether key evidence the prosecution needs to prove its case against Donald Trump will remain. Anytime Judge Aileen Cannon goes under the hood of this case, it's a white knuckle moment. And now we got new reporting that at least two judges, including the chief judge of the Southern District of Florida, encouraged Aileen Cannon to step aside. Want to know more? Tune into Legal AF, our podcast. Take a listen.
Michael Popok, you practice both in New York and Florida. You've practiced in state court and federal courts in Florida, in the Southern District of Florida as well. So you know the players in this story. You know who the chief judge is, Cecilia Altanaga. And this New York Times bombshell report, something that is very unprecedented. One, that a story like this even leaks to begin with. Usually this is all done in secret, and where you have two federal judges, more senior judges, counseling a junior judge, Judge Cannon, a new judge, and especially a new judge at the time they counseled her as well. That never leaks because it's usually only the judges who could be the source of a story like that, and they don't usually tell other people. That's why it's so rare that it leaks. But the Times got the scoop that the chief judge, Cecilia Altanaga, who you've mentioned before, and you've said before this story, for those legal AFers who have been listening for quite some time, you said, look, Ben, legal AFers, I know that chief judge. Yes, she was appointed by George W. Bush. This, though, is a no-nonsense law and order judge who is a great judge. She's a real mainstream conservative, not a MAGA, and she will not be happy with the way Judge Cannon is behaving. And sure enough, we now learned, and Popok, you called it, man, that Judge Altanaga, Chief Judge Altanaga, along with another more senior to Judge Cannon, federal judge. They all work in the same.
And I have an idea, Ben, who that is when it turns to me.
I'm going to turn it to you right now. They went to Cannon and said, you can't be on this case. You were appointed by Donald Trump, number one. Number two, you mishandled the search warrant that was executed at Mar-a-Lago and embarrassed this district when the 11th Circuit smacked you down twice in two scathing orders. This is a bad look for everyone. And three, you don't have in Fort Pierce sensitive compartmented information facilities to even hear classified document cases. You're going to force taxpayers to build a facility in Fort Pierce where we have judges who have done trials before, unlike you, who has no trial experience, Judge Cannon. We have skiffs in Miami, and we'll have law and order judges handle it. Step aside, Judge Cannon said no. How strange, how rare is this, how unprecedented? Popok, you know these people involved. Tell us about it.
I do, and I appreciate that. I tried to bring, just as you do from your practice, my own color, no pun intended with my colors today, including my glasses, my own color from having practiced down there. I know Cecilia Altanaga very, very well because she started on the circuit court, the state level court, where a lot of judges at the federal Southern District of Florida level start, most of them in Miami, some of them in West Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale, but most of them in Miami. She was appointed by Jeb Bush when he was the governor and elevated to the position from the civil court to the circuit court. And I practiced in front of her. She is the first female Cuban-American woman to be a federal judge, takes that with a tremendous amount of pride. Her appointment by George W. Bush tells you everything that you just summarized that you need to know about Cecilia Altanaga. She is not a ideologue. She is not MAGA. She predates MAGA. She's 61 years old. She went to Yale Law School. She started her career as her father came here as a lawyer who couldn't practice from Cuba. And she takes her position very, very seriously. And I said early on that there would be a phone call between Cecilia Altanaga and Judge Cannon, although she couldn't replace her. She couldn't remove her with some sage advice. I anticipated that, knowing Cecilia Altanaga, and it looks like that's true. On the case of the second judge, if I had to make a prediction, I'll do it here. I think it's Judge Middlebrooks. Judge Middlebrooks is the senior judge in that same division. He sits in West Palm Beach. She sits 30 miles north in Fort Pierce. It could be another judge in Fort Lauderdale. There's a few there. There's a bunch in Miami. But if I had a gun to my head, I would say Don Middlebrooks, who's also the judge people know, who's been involved with the Hillary Clinton case brought by Donald Trump, the sanctions for over $1 million brought against Donald Trump and Alina Habba. But he is also a no-nonsense. Yes, he was appointed by Clinton, but so what? He was a very well-respected trial lawyer for about 20 years, doing what you and I do, commercial litigation, civil rights litigation in that area. I know the firm he was with. I had one of my first cases as a young lawyer when I was second chairing a federal case in West Palm Beach with Don Middlebrooks. Always found him to be, ever since, just an astute, sober jurist, which is all that we've ever seen. I think because they rub elbows a little bit. She sits occasionally in West Palm Beach. And it could have went to Don Middlebrooks, but there was I forget the reason, that the wheel, when it fell on her and not on Don Middlebrooks. Now, you're exactly right. This cadre of more senior, seasoned litigators, trial lawyers, who I've said all had litigation experience, and would be really, really appropriate and do great honor to the proud tradition of the Southern District of Florida, unlike what's going on right now, which is making my heart hurt and my brain hurt in watching this judge who is so inexperienced and so it's a dangerous combination. It is this lack of knowledge and experience combined with the self-righteousness that she is doing the right thing and only she can make these decisions the way she's making them. She had no trial experience to speak of when she was an associate in a private law firm. I'm talking about Judge Cannon now. She had no real trial experience when she worked for the Department of Justice, because she didn't even work in the trial division. She worked in the appeal division, meaning she sat in some room writing briefs, and I doubt she argued them. And if she did, they were on very low-level issues. She then took the bench effectively during COVID. She had about 10 total trial days under her belt, total, before she got assigned this case. And Altanaga said to her, it's a bad look. Think of the optics. You got slapped back twice by our bosses at the 11th Circuit before this case even led to an indictment, when you interfered inappropriately with the investigation, which you shouldn't have, not once, but twice. It's a bad look. Elaine, why don't you think about stepping down? Words to that effect. And then, as you said, they don't even have the hardened facility that's necessary in Fort Pierce, because it's this backwater division up in the upper regions of the Southern District, about as far away from Miami and Key West as possible, which is the entire district. And so she forced, as you said, taxpayer dollars to be used out of her ego to build a facility that's like a disposable facility. It'll never be used again. There's never going to be a Classified Information Procedures Act SIPA case involving a former president or anything like it in Fort Pierce, Florida. They might as well just make it the Aileen Cannon Memorial Museum, because when she either leaves the bench and goes and takes a lucrative MAGA private practice position for millions of dollars, or it somehow gets elevated by a, shudder to think, President Donald Trump, which is what she seems to be trying out for. And then you had the hearing. And I'll just do my part of the hearing, turn it back to you. She has the hearing where, for me, there's a lot of things going on between what happened on Thursday, Friday, and what's going to happen Monday, Tuesday. That scares the living crap out of me. As I said, whenever she goes under the hood of this case, I get really, really upset and crazed. So I'm just trying to hold it together here for legal AF. Next week, she's going to decide whether suppression of the evidence related to Mar-a-Lago and the execution of the search warrant, which is the very heart of the case. The case is about the evidence that was seized during the search warrant. If she suppresses it, the case is over. Yes, it's an appellate grounds, and it's a way to get to the 11th Circuit. I'll leave that to you. But that scares the crap out of me. The fact that she would try to reconsider the well-thought-out decision by the then Chief Judge of the D.C. Circuit Court, Beryl Howell, who, after a secret hearing, yes, they're secret hearings because they involve grand jury proceedings, she determined that Donald Trump and his then main lawyer for Mar-a-Lago, Evan Corcoran, committed a crime or a fraud, stripping Donald Trump of the attorney-client privilege and making him testify, Evan Corcoran, damningly against his client, and turn over 50 pages of single-spaced notes, and turn over video memo recordings that he made, musings about Donald Trump. in which he basically told him that he should break the law, and that Donald Trump, which demonstrates the willful intent, that is the corrupt intent that's required to turn this into a crime. Without Evan Corcoran's testimony, without the documents at Mar-a-Lago, this case can't be won by the special counsel. And in addition to that, we've got a Aileen Cannon that either fell asleep at law school or refuses to acknowledge well-settled super precedent that going back to Nixon from 1974 that says whether you call it the special prosecutor appointed by the Department of Justice and acting Attorney General Robert Bork back in 1974 of Leon Jaworski to go after Nixon and everybody around him, which led to the indictments and convictions and jail time for people like the Attorney General under Richard Nixon. Whether you call it the special prosecutor, who was not appointed or confirmed by Congress, but was implicitly and tacitly approved by the Supreme Court, who forced Richard Nixon over his executive privilege assertion, sound familiar, to turn over his recorded tapes to the special prosecutor. If the special prosecutor was invalid, then how would the Supreme Court order that there be compliance with his subpoena? That's 1974. It's almost to a day. It's July 7th of 1974 or so when that decision came out. So you got that. And then you had the independent counsel position, which was created by Congress, yes, in the 1980s, and there was an exact a checklist of things about the creation of an office called the independent counsel, and that's Ken Starr and a couple of others that happened during that particular time. And then the Congress, both Republican and Democrat, said, well, no, we don't like the independent counsel. Let's let the Department of Justice do their own thing. And they didn't reauthorize the independent counsel. So the Department of Justice went back to what it did during Nixon and created a formalized special counsel. It's just like the special prosecutor, but they gave it another name, and they outlined it in their Code of Federal Regulation of exactly how they wanted the person to be appointed and the oversight that the Attorney General would have over that position, and the checks and balance of the Attorney General having to report ultimately to the ranking committee members of the House and Senate Judiciary Committee about the report and the recommendation whether to seek an indictment and continue to prosecute the case, ultimately in the hands of the Attorney General. But to Aileen Cannon, who took the bait again, led by Emile Beauvais, fresh off his 34-count conviction of his client in New York, she said, it's very interesting. Tell me more about let me grill the Department of Justice lawyer, James Pierce. Let me ask him more questions. Tell me exactly the level of oversight and supervision by Merrick Garland. Go read the special counsel provision. That will tell you the level of supervision. And it is appropriate as she's trying to decide whether there's been an improper delegation by the Department of Justice Attorney General for the last 35 years. Every federal judge that has faced this issue and had this issue raised for them quickly dispatched it and said, this is Boulder Dash. And let's move on to the substance of the case. Not Aileen Cannon, so interested that she spent 5 hours, including having, as you said, the amicus briefers, 2 of which are pro-Trumpers, get up and do argument. Look, we're in an adversarial process. We rely on the lawyers for the case, the party's lawyers, Trump's lawyers, and the Department of Justice lawyers. We don't have outsider strangers drive by who just happen to check the board and see that there's a trial going on or a hearing going on and saying, can we come in and make an argument? I'd love to do that. I would just ride the circuit making arguments in cases I have no business or standing in participating in. This is the world of Aileen Cannon. Now you understand why some combination of Chief Judge Altanaga and maybe Don Middlebrooks told her, get the F out of this case. And she refused. And I want to hear your opinion about why she refused to get out of the case when she had the opportunity, without us knowing about it, to recuse herself.
Because she's a MAGA judge and she's taken the gamble that she wants to be a Supreme Court justice. She knows she doesn't have the skills, qualifications, and like lots of MAGA, she can't do it on the merit because she doesn't have the intellectual capacity, but she does have the capacity for corruption and the desire and an ability to utilize anything it takes to try to get that power. And that's what we see. Briefly, Michael Popok, I'll mention that hearing that took place in Judge Cannon's courtroom that you discussed, Donald Trump's motion to dismiss the indictment on the unlawful appointment, unlawful appropriations. You laid out essentially what the challenge is that has been rejected over several decades, trying to say a special counsel or an independent counsel is actually a superior officer. As a result, they need Senate confirmation. With no Senate confirmation, they are acting in an ultra-vires, illegal manner, and anything they touch is unlawful. They are technically supervised. They are inferior officers. They are supervised by the Attorney General. They have to comply with the Attorney General guidelines. The supervision's not micromanagement, but one of the things that Judge Cannon really seemed to want to do and why she was holding this hearing was to try to fuel and funnel some of these right-wing conspiracies about the level of supervision of Merrick Garland to an inferior officer, the special counsel, because the argument would go, if the special counsel has nothing to do with the Attorney General, they're functioning as a superior officer, and as a result, there requires an appointment process since there's otherwise no accountability. So to me, this was kind of a backdoor way to try to funnel some of those right-wing conspiracies, and Judge Cannon didn't realize what the Department of Justice was just going to say, which is just, Your Honor, this is what the precedent is. There's no micromanagement. There's no day-to-day supervision or even month-to-month supervision. But Jack Smith has to comply like all special counsels do in all of these proceedings, whether it's a Republican-appointed one or one in a Democratic administration. They comply with the DOJ guidelines, and that's all we're going to tell you. We don't have to tell you anything more than that, and that kind of diffused it. I don't think that Judge Cannon is going to dismiss on the basis of unlawful appointment or unlawful apportionment. That didn't seem to be where the hearing was going. But the fact that she was doing this show hearing and entertaining really a totally frivolous argument just shows you there's an undermining of the proceedings just by her holding that hearing. One of the other issues that's going to be discussed next week is special counsel Jack Smith's request to modify the conditions of Donald Trump's release, in essence imposing a gag order preventing Donald Trump from continuing to lie, where Donald Trump lies about, not lying in general, but lying that the FBI and DOJ are actively trying to hunt him down and assassinate him based on the general use of force policy that exists to anybody who is subject to a search warrant. Donald Trump says, look, it says use of lethal force. They're trying to kill me. They're coming after me. They want me dead. It's the same use of force policy that anybody, whether you're President Biden, whether your house is being searched, that's just the standard use of force policy that exists to every single search warrant. And special counsel Jack Smith put in a filing, and this to me was really a warning shot to Judge Cannon, on this specific motion too. It's Judge Cannon, look, Donald Trump, if somebody gets killed because of his behavior, he'll throw that person under the bus. He'll throw under the bus the murderer and say, oh, I had nothing to do with it, after riling the person up and bragging about how he riles up his violent supporters. But Judge Cannon, neither you nor we have the luxury of behaving in that manner. We have an obligation to protect law enforcement, and that's what we are going to do. And under no situation are we going to be okay with our law enforcement getting killed because you're not going to make the right decision. Every court would impose a limited gag order relating to this specific type of conduct. Trump could go on, whine about Biden, whine about the special counsel, whine till his heart delights. Go for it. But you can't threaten law enforcement or try to get law enforcement killed. So that was filed on Friday night. There will be a hearing on that in the afternoon on Monday. And that's one of the grounds that special counsel Jack Smith will use if she rules the wrong way to get her removed. I think the chief judge of the Southern District of Florida is hoping Judge Cannon makes the wrong decision so she can be removed. I think the 11th Circuit is hoping she makes the wrong decision. I think knowing Judge Cannon, she'll probably just delay, at which point I think at some point Jack Smith's going to say, all right, if you're not going to rule, we're going to take a writ with the 11th Circuit because Just last week, another FBI agent had his life threatened. And in the motion that Jack Smith filed, he went in very specific detail about the type of threats that the FBI gets. Oh, if Trump takes over, you're going to be destroyed. And if Trump doesn't win, I'm going to hunt you down. Because when you tell Trump's violent supporters that the FBI and DOJ are trying to kill Trump, which is false, they're going to do violent things on Trump's behalf. Also, if you go look at some of the other hot takes that I do, I show you the types of emails that Donald Trump sends to his supporters. They're filled with violent rhetoric. We need to show force. Join me in this battle. We have to attack them. And he tries to attack them with the force of our energy. But then in bold, it'll be like, we need to attack them. The battle begins right now. They've declared war. Join my war council. It's time we get after them. And he knows what he's doing right there. And he's doing that very, very intentionally. So
welcome back. That was the Legal AF podcast. We call it Legal AF for a reason. And now you know why. And if you don't, join us on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time right here on this MeidasTouch YouTube channel. Free subscribe and help them get to 3 million before the election. We have no outside investors. We are an independent network. No one censors what we say on this show or any other show or our editorial comments or analysis. It's lawyers talking about things they know what they're talking about at the intersection of law and politics. If you know about Legal AF and or you missed this last episode, that was a clip. Send it off to friends and family if you can. It really will help the network. Ask them, invite them to join our audience. If you don't know what Legal AF is, that was a teaser. That was a taste, a bite-sized moment. And if you like that, you'll love our full-length, hour-long podcast. Again, Wednesdays, Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on this YouTube channel and wherever you pick up your podcast from. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.